I once heard somewhere that you don't fully understand something until you're able to explain it to someone else. I don't know where I heard it or even if it's actually true, but it makes a lot of sense to me. We never truly know something until we're asked to explain it. Can you explain that to me? Someone might ask. I know generally how a piano works. You hit this, and that hits something else, and then that hits a chord, and then music comes out. Clearly, I don't know that much about how a piano works. And of course, if we are going to a physician, and that physician is going to remove our appendix, we don't want to hear generalities, do we? Oh, I'm just going to stick this into your abdomen somewhere and just fish around and hope for the best. No, we do not want to hear things like that. We want to hear specifics. We want to know that somebody understands what they're doing. We want to know that that physician has given this experience much thought and study and possibly a prayer. So I think this idea also translates to our spiritual lives, to who we are as spiritual beings. Sometimes, maybe not often, but sometimes we are asked to explain what we believe and why we believe it. It's important to be able to respond. What do you have to say about the church? What do you have to say about God? What do you have to say about forgiveness and reconciliation and resurrection? Wow, it might be easier to remove an appendix. Well, today Jesus is asking for specifics. In fact, the title of my sermon is, "Who do you say that I am? Please be specific." He's asking his disciples. Jesus is asking his disciples what they believe and what they understand to be true. But first, it's always to understand just a little bit about our context, particularly the location in which this question is asked. Think about it. This question has stuck around for 2,000 years. Why? What's so important about this question? Well, I think it has a little bit to do with the context. It's in a place called Caesarea Philippi. And in Jesus' day, in the Greek culture of Jesus' day, Caesarea Philippi was an important place for a couple of reasons. It was important for spiritual reasons, because there was a cave nearby that was dedicated to the Greek god Pan. Also, Caesarea Philippi was located on a very important trade route, and it was home to an important spring that fed the Jordan River. Caesarea Philippi was also a very important political destination. King Herod the Great had built a temple near that spring to honor Caesar Augustus. And by Jesus' time, Herod's son, Philip, had taken over from his father and conveniently named the city after himself, Caesarea Philippi, and established that city as the administrative center of his government. So this place is important politically, geographically, and spiritually. So do you think it is an accident that Jesus chooses this place to ask his disciples this question? Who do people say that the Son of Man is? As one of my preacher friends says, it's as if Jesus has taken his disciples to the biblical intersection of Wall Street, Madison Avenue, Capitol Hill, and the National Cathedral. and ask them now, in the midst of all of this, in the midst of all of these powers and all of the things that are pulling things from you and asking things of you, now tell me, who do people say that I am? And what's even more important is that Jesus turns it into something specific. Who do you say that I am? You can hear the disciples scramble and stutter, can't you, for the right thing to say. Oh, some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. We don't know. But then, as I said, Jesus raises the stakes and makes the conversation more uncomfortable by making it personal. Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Audrey West is a Moravian pastor and New Testament scholar, and she frames things this way. She says, Jesus' question, who do you say that I am, hangs in the air at the intersection of economic trade, religion, and the power of the empire. So more than asking about Jesus' identity, it's a question about allegiance. What is important to you? Where do your priorities truly lie? And what do you care most about? It's funny, isn't it, how our answers change when we're asked to give our own testimony. So, you know it's coming, right? I might as well cut to the chase. At the heart of this sermon is the question for all of us. What would you say, Christian? What would you say if someone asked you, who do you say that Jesus is? I think we're all called to have language in response to this question. And the good news is that in our particular tradition, in our particular expression of the Jesus movement, we have examples of what other people have said in response to this question. We have a spiritual calendar that is filled with people who makes claims with their lives about who Jesus is. And they're all in this book. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have made known loud and clear who Jesus is to them. It's like a great sample of Jesus followers. It's called Holy Women, Holy Men. And we celebrate the people in this book not because they're perfect, but because they have been loud and clear about who Jesus is to them. For example, Dr. King. Dr. King's in there. We celebrated him back in January. Remember that? Who would Dr. King say that Jesus is? Well, I think Dr. King would say that Jesus is ultimate liberator, a person who stands against slavery and racism of any type. He would say that his Jesus is a Jesus who fights to set the captive free, a Jesus who encourages him to follow his and God's dream. Mary Magdalene's in here. Remember, she is believed to have been the person to pour an entire jar of expensive perfume on Jesus' feet to demonstrate that Jesus is worth it all. Every bit of it, every drop. Who would she say her Jesus is? My Jesus is the Jesus you don't hold anything back from, because my Jesus didn't hold anything back from me. And then just a few days ago, we lifted up the life of Jonathan Myrick Daniels. You may have heard of him. He was a seminary colleague of a former rector of this parish, Bob Hetherington. And the story goes that Bob and Jonathan, back in the 60s, went to Alabama to help register voters. And you probably have heard that Jonathan lost his life because he put himself in between a young woman of color and the gun barrel of a white supremacist. Her name was Ruby Sales. And I bet if you ask Ruby Sales today what Jesus looks like, that she might say that he looks like Jonathan Myrick Daniels. His Jesus is one who makes the ultimate sacrifice for the life of another. And I bet you can hear right now, what if you ask our bishop, our presiding bishop, Michael Curry, who Jesus is? You'd have to sit down. So some of these people lost their lives, but that's not the reason why they're in this book. We celebrate them because if we want to know what Jesus looks like, we can look to them. You see, what I'm driving at, my friends, is that the way that we live our lives makes a statement about who Jesus is. Specifically, the decisions that you make, the things that you value, what you do with your money and your time, they all tell a story about who you believe Jesus to be. And there's that great line in morning prayer, in the general thanksgiving that we've been saying. It says that we show forth our praise not only with our lips, but in our lives. Your lives. Your lives tell your neighbor. Your lives tell your political leaders. Your lives tell your friends. Your lives tell your enemies who Jesus is. So what does your life say about the Jesus that you follow? And what do your lips say about the Jesus that you have dedicated yourself to? Now, it would not be fair for me to ask you to answer this question without me giving it a shot, right? So here I go. Who do I say that Jesus is? I say that Jesus is the child of God, fully human and fully divine. Jesus is a living manifestation of love and justice and mercy. Jesus gets angry. Jesus gets frustrated. Jesus understands rejection and denial. Ultimately, Jesus came to die at the hands of hate and prejudice and fear. Why? So that God could show the world that God's love for us is stronger than the worst thing that humanity can dish out and serve up. And the act of ultimate compassion and mercy forever puts us into right relationship with God. So what part of Jesus do I hope people will experience in me and in my life? Well, I hope that they see the Jesus that tries to break open God's word and God's world. And I hope that people see a Jesus that incarnates inclusivity. And it's interesting that it was this very phrase, that attracted me to this church 1 year ago. You wanted a rector that incarnates inclusivity. You wrote that down. And that's what I was drawn to. And I hope that you're beginning to see what that looks like. I hope that people see the Jesus who invites his followers to look at life honestly. I hope that people see the Jesus that holds us all to accountability about the way that we treat each other and love each other and love on our planet. Folks, these answers don't have to be perfect, and they by no means have to be complicated theological statements. And we may in the end never fully understand them because they're mysteries. They're mysteries. But still, we are called to have an authentic response when people ask us, when they are curious, when they are lost, when they are looking. We want them to ask us, right? And we want to be able to respond. And when people look at this church at St. Paul's, I want them to see a clear statement about who Jesus is? Who do you say that Jesus is? What matters to you? What do you hold dear? I didn't ask the question myself. Jesus asked it and continues to ask it every day of our lives. And for thousands of years, people have responded. The bold and the meek have responded. The poor and the rich have responded. The stammerers and the stutterers have responded. The articulate and the poetic have responded. The ones out front and the ones behind the scenes have responded. The heroic and the frightened have responded. And we, like them in our own ways, are responding too. Not only with our lips, but with our lives. Mercifully, there is only one Jesus. And I am not by any way suggesting that we are called to fully be like him, because there is only one Jesus of Nazareth. But we can represent pieces of him. And we can try to join those pieces with other pieces. My piece to your piece to my piece. Your piece of Jesus to that piece of Jesus, so that when we do come together, we offer glimpses of the kingdom, reflections of the living Christ, and an earth that looks more and more, piece by piece, like heaven. May Jesus Christ be praised. Amen.